Hello, BookTube, and welcome to another weekly reading vlog. So, it's yet another week where I've been very busy and I've gotten very little work done. If you've been watching this channel regularly, you already know the story, but if you don't, or if you haven't been, I'll recap briefly. I've managed to overload myself with work. I'm teaching probably way more hours than I should this term. So for 10 weeks, I'm going to be insanely busy, and I've just thrown my reading goals out the window for these 10 weeks. I no longer have any expectations of myself. I'm just trying to survive. A lot of the books that I had been trying to make progress on, I've just put on hold. And instead, yeah, instead, I've been reading the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass primarily because it's pocket size. It's so small, I can just put it in my pocket. And I get a little bit of reading done while I'm quickly eating lunch or while I'm waiting for class to begin or, in my 5-minute break or something like that. Just a book you can nibble on in little 5-minute bites. I'll get to this in a moment. Mention a couple other things. I did pick up 300 out of the school library. Now, unfortunately, I haven't made any progress in Herodotus this week. I regret to say. But I had been reading Herodotus, and I had just the week before last, I believe, read about the 300 battle at Thermopylae. And it caused me to think again that I have never gotten around to seeing the 300 movie. The 300 movie came out, when did that come out? In 2006. Opened, as I recall, to rather poor reviews, and all my history nerd friends said it wasn't worth seeing, and so I didn't bother seeing it. But I did not know at that time how big a cultural milestone that movie would be in terms of like memes and people quoting it and just being generally memorable. So I've been thinking for a long time I should really see that movie in conjunction with reading this book, just to maybe connect some dots. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the movie. Um, I mean, I'm sure I could find it illegally online, but I don't have any legal access to the movie. I'm pretty busy, anyways. So when I saw the graphic novel in my school library, I thought, okay, well, I should definitely at least pick up the graphic novel. And even though I'm really busy these days, I thought I should pick it up now rather than later because I've just read the Thermopylae battle in Herodotus, so this is the perfect time to read it. So I think I'm going to. I got I don't know, about a quarter of a way through this. Yeah, roughly a quarter of the way through the first two chapters. I think there are, how many chapters are there? 5 chapters. Yeah, and I think I will try and do a review of this when I finish it. I've been thinking for some time about adding graphic novels to the things I review because I review everything else I consume on this channel. So why not? But I don't think I'm going to count it towards my weekly reading. I mean, I'm mentioning it just now, but this doesn't get counted towards my page counts for this week or anything like that. What I am counting for my page counts, though, is The Little Prince. Even though I know this is kind of cheating. It's big print pages that are very heavily illustrated. But I think this counts as a novella. I actually did a video on this morning, my time, in which I, among other things, talked about why I was reading this, how I justified counting this in my book review project, even though it's kind of a picture book. I think it has enough text to justify it. Um, And as I mentioned in that video, I had been reading this, parts of this at least, to my daughter over the last several weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Um, but I had not sat down and read it all the way straight through. Another one of those children's classics I just never got around to. So I did that this morning. So I'm counting that as 95 pages with the little prints. I'm not going to say much more about this because I already filmed a review of it. I'll link to that review in the description down below. And then what did I do with that? Yeah, and then just Frederick Douglass, the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. So, Frederick Douglass apparently published 3 autobiographies during his life. I had maybe gotten a little bit mixed up when I filmed my started review for this. I had thought maybe this was the definitive one. But this is actually his first one, the one he published in 1845. I'm sure it would be interesting to track down like his final autobiography in which he talks about, meeting John Brown or meeting Lincoln or something like that. This one is just his narrative of his life of the slave. That being said, though, I think this is the big one that had the impact on the American history. This was the big sensation in the pre-Civil War years. Starts off with a couple different prefaces after the publisher's introduction. There's one by William Lloyd Garrison. William Lloyd Garrison is a name I remember from my high school history class, the famous abolitionist. And then there's a second preface by Wendell Phillips, which is a name I didn't recognize, but I went to Wikipedia and he was also a very famous abolitionist during his day. It's interesting reading these prefaces by famous abolitionists because, a number of things strike you. One of the things that struck me is how modern it is in the condemnation of slavery. And granted, these are strident abolitionists, but you do kind of think, well, okay, back in the nowadays in 2022, we think, wow, slavery. How could the United States ever possibly have done slavery, right? But you think, well, okay, back in 1845, they must have been more used to it. But the language here is very strong from both abolitionists, and these were white people. This is an abomination. We are the worst nation on earth. This is terrible. God's going to punish us. I mean, it's every bit as strident as any condemnation of slavery retrospectively that you would read today. So goes to show that people are not necessarily a victim of the times they live in. There was very strident anti-slavery rhetoric going on in 1840s. And I knew this. I knew this because, of course there was, because that's why we had the Civil War. But it's just, shocking to read it nonetheless and be reminded of how strong the emotions were at that time. The other thing that strikes me reading through what these abolitionists wrote is something that I think is true of politics today. Is all throughout there's a sense of, I guess nowadays we would call it tribalism. Like, we are the good tribe, we are the good political group, they are the evil political group. And the feeling, especially in William Lloyd Garrison's preface, he says, it's no use arguing with these people. we've told them this, we've proved this, we've shown them this, and yet still there are people who say that slavery isn't that bad, who are just shut their eyes or close their ears in the face of this overwhelming evidence. And he says, yeah, here we have yet another narrative showing how cruel slavery is. And yet we know that those defenders of slavery are just going to ignore this as well. So it very much brings to mind today's political landscape, where I think both sides are very locked in to their positions. I mean, I happen to be more sympathetic to one of these sides, but I think you can objectively say that both sides are completely locked into their positions and just refuse to listen to anything that comes from the other side. That frustration was going on in the 1840s as well. So, I think maybe to a certain extent it is just human nature to have politics be in terms of tribalism and see politics in terms of pure good versus pure evil, and to have this very in-group versus out-group mentality during politics. So on the other hand, I mean, on the one hand, you see that and you're like, William Lloyd Garrison, you're just falling into that trap where you're demonizing the other side again. That's just what humans do when they get in political disagreements. But then on the other hand, you're like, but he was right, right? Like the pro-slavery side really was evil. So I don't know. I guess just because you get into politically divisive times doesn't mean you're wrong, I guess. So then after that, we get to the beginning of the narrative. This is Frederick Douglass's. And yeah, it's what you would expect a narrative of slavery life to be like. It's depressing and it makes you angry. And it's unfortunate that this is my book that I just grabbed for a few minutes over lunch, because like, okay, got a quick break, get some lunch, relax, and then you're reading this book and you're like, oh, I'm so angry reading this, because reading the injustices of what the slave owners did to the slaves back then makes you angry. And my own experience with this is something that I suspect is everyone's experience with this. You learn about it in school. I mean, I remember learning about this in 5th grade and just feeling so angry about the injustices that were done in the past, and feeling so frustrated that you couldn't go back and slap those people in the face because they've been dead for 200 years, but feeling like you really wanted to go back in time and assault those people, and just all the emotions that go through with learning those historical injustices. And then as the years go by and as you leave school, it goes to the back of your memory. You don't forget about it, but you're not thinking about it every day either. And then you read a book on it and it comes back to the forefront of your mind. And you're like, oh, I've forgotten how abhorrent, how really abhorrent that whole system was. This isn't the first book I've read on this subject since I finished school. I don't know, every 10 years or something, you read something about it, it comes back to the front of your mind, and then you forget about it for a little bit. You stop reading about it, it goes to the back of your mind. Sorry, I'm becoming incoherent, but I suspect everybody knows what I'm talking about or has experienced it. So yeah, this is one of those things where, it's not that I didn't know that slavery was really terrible, but it brings it back to the front of your mind and really makes you angry. Um, I mean, it's I don't know why I get angry about it because it struck me that it's the most useless thing ever to get angry about this stuff because everyone who did it is long dead. Everyone who suffered under it is long dead. It's just purely consigned to the past and gets more and more into the past every year. Um, but it's just a human reaction, isn't it? When you're confronted with this injustice, you you get emotional about it. You feel upset about it. You feel angry about it. Um, so in that respect, it's not a good book to be carrying around with me and reading for 5 minutes during lunch. But in terms of portability, it's just the perfect book. So yeah, I've read 50 pages out of it. The first 15 pages were the prefaces by William Lloyd Garrison and Wendell Phillips, and then pages 15 to 50, Frederick Douglass's narrative, um, and then yeah, it's not long. The book, the main text ends on page 122, so I only have another 70 pages left. Um, so yeah, I think that's my reading week. I'm not sure what this coming week will bring. I've actually got some public holidays coming up. So that insanely busy schedule I was just mentioning is not. I have at least 2 days where it's not going to be so insanely busy. But I also have a baby and a 3-year-old in this apartment, and I've been discovering that even my days off can sometimes be quite busy just managing the kids. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to get any reading done over the next couple days or not. But I may have slightly more time this coming week. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I'm gonna call it good. That's my weekly reading vlog for this week.